Hi everyone, this is audap. Let's continue our game of Iwaihime on PC. The cat gets settled here. Alright, 1 second. No, never mind. You come hang out? Okay. Signal, okay. I've been having problems with the capture card scaling correctly. So sometimes the window appears within a window within a smaller resolution frame. It's one of those things where I'm never quite sure when it happens. It's random. It won't always be the same game, and it won't always be the same situation that causes it to occur. Gonna work? No? Not gonna work? Oh my god. Sometimes these creator dashboards, I swear. I mean, if I didn't make so many friends doing this, anybody that's watching, I honestly would stop. But I sort of feel like now that we've gone on so many different journeys together, I wouldn't want to say goodbye, after all the time we spent. But boy, these tools, they definitely don't work as well as they should. So unpredictable. Okay. I think that is going to work about as well as it will. Hope everybody had a good Halloween. I know it's very untraditional this year. All the kids in my neighborhood grew up, so I don't get any trick-or-treaters anymore. I didn't even bother buying candy this year. That's how bad it was. I felt like my whole world had shattered into pieces, like a mirror. The things he said were far beyond insulting, but they were all true. My body had long since ceased to be magical lily. The pure, clinging princess was gone. I had these disgusting fat sacks on my chest, and my butt was huge and repulsive. My nose was long and pointed, and my face was horrifying. I hated looking at myself in the mirror. I knew all that. I didn't need him to remind me. This body wasn't Lily. This wasn't me. I knew that. This was the body of a pig. A monster.
僕は夏君を尊敬するよ。そんな醜い姿になってもなおマジカルリリーだなんて言える君に愛想を尽かさないことにね。
I wanted to scream so loud that it erased his words. But I couldn't erase the truth. My hideous insecurities and my hideous body were both undeniable. Screaming wouldn't make them go away. I hung my head and sobbed. I was disgusted that I thought my new self could do well just because of a stupid interview.
でも
There was the faintest sense of warmth in his voice. It served as a ray of hope in my darkest hour.
君は自分のいびつさをちゃんと理解していたよ。だからリリーを卒業して新しい自分になろうと決意したんじゃないか。リリーで居続けるか新しい自分になるか、どちらの選択だって構わない。でもどちらかでなければならないんだよ。君はその選択をちゃんとした。そこだけは君は褒められてもいいと思うな。
I finally understood why he'd angered me. I'd planned on cutting ties with the past, yet I was still chained to it. That was why I turned into this hideous pig. I already knew this body didn't belong to Magical Lily. If I wanted to preserve her charm forever, then I had to stop lying.
私、もうマジカルリリーじゃないです。二度とマジカルリリーだなんて言いません。昔みたいな可愛こぶった喋り方なんて二度としません。マジカルリリーじゃなく、クルス・リリアとして本当に生まれ変わると誓います。
Susahara smiled when I announced my decision.
リリアちゃん。
His voice came from behind me. I turned around to find Susahara standing there. What? Then who had I been talking to? Then I finally noticed. I was standing all alone in front of the hall, with the countless dolls as my only onlookers. And Susahara had just called out to me from behind?
どうしたの？
どうしたって、私今先輩と話してましたよね。
おう、話してるんじゃないかな。
Susahara looked confused. It seemed he really didn't have a clue what I was talking about. Then, who in the world was that? I thought I was talking to Susahara, but I was actually all alone this whole time.
具合悪いの？
いえ、まあ私昔からぼんやりしてると変な白チュームとか見ちゃう体質らしいんです。最近は治ったかなって思ってたんですけど、またそれだったみたいで。
Yes, it must have been a daydream. Thinking otherwise would bring me no answers.
お稽古とかで疲れてるんだよ。社長コブ、土日の活動は無理しないで、休めるときは休んでね。
先輩。
Susahara's kind words spread across my heart like milk spreading through hot cocoa. He'd appeared in my dreams and daydreams. I thought he was cold, but his consideration here had proven me wrong. I wondered just how much of my mind he could possibly occupy. He really was special, that was for sure. With his words, consideration, support, and recognition, I would be complete. We'd only known each other for a few days. We'd only said a few words to each other. And yet, I felt like I'd known him my whole life. It was like he didn't have those walls others had around them. What I felt for him was a sense of connection you'd normally only get with good friends and family. In hindsight, I might have felt that way since the first time we met. It wasn't that I was attracted to him. It was that there were no barriers between us to begin with. I used to think love at first sight was more about your heart pounding so hard you couldn't take it. I never knew it could feel this warm. That baseless sense of love at first sight was now becoming something more self-aware.
ジュースを買ってきたんだ。みんな事務所にいるよ。
私のこと探しててくれたんですか？すみません、行き違いになっちゃったみたいですね。
リリアちゃんの好みがよくわからなくて、僕の好みで選んじゃったけど、大丈夫かな？
お茶系でしたらどれでも大丈夫ですので。
Susahara went to buy drinks? Then the Susahara I saw before. No, there's only one Susahara. That Susahara and this one are both Susahara. He was Suzumu Susahara for sure. I could feel it. Then did his thoughts and feelings reach me, or something like that? What an idea. It sounded like something out of a fairy tale. Oh well, I didn't care what it was. They were both Susahara, and both of them were special to me.
それにしても、すごい数の人形だね。
ですね。古い人形って思いとかをいっぱい吸い込んでるそうですからね。怨念とかもあるかも。ちょっと怖いですよね。
そうだね。そういうのもあるかも。ここあまりいい感じがしないから。
あれ？先輩ってオカルトとかわかる人なんですか？
そういうのじゃないけど、でもなんとなくそんな気がするというか。
Anyone would be unsettled when surrounded by hundreds of these creepy dolls. But it sounded like what Susahara was talking about went beyond that.
意味とする場所って僕はあると思うんだ。
意味とする場所。
人だって慰めるのも励ますのもどちらも逆効果になってしまう感情の時ってあるよね。
一人にしておいた方がいい時ってやつですね。
僕は父さんに場所にもそういうところがあるって教わったことがあるんだ。父さんはそれを意味とする場所って呼んでたけどね。
汚れた場所ってわけですね。そういう場所には用事もなく近づかない方がいいですものね。ありがとうございます、先輩。これからは気をつけますね。そうだ、実は先輩にお渡ししたいものがあって。
だったら僕にも近づかない方がいいかもね。僕も汚れてるそうだから。
He said all that with a composed smile. I couldn't tell if he was serious or joking.
どうして先輩が汚れてるんですか？
さあね。でもさっきやった黒髪さんが僕にそう言うんだ。僕は汚れているから二度と近づくな。不幸が訪れるって。
It's been true so far.
黒髪先輩はちょっとあれですからね。そんなの気にしない方がいいですよ。先輩が汚れてるなんてことあるわけないじゃないですか。
When I met Susahara, it was love at first sight. No, something beyond that. Yet Kurakami said that approaching him would bring misfortune. How messed up.
ごめん。ちょっと茶化そうとして言っただけのつもりだったのに、なんだか深刻な言い方になっちゃった。
Susahara smiled apologetically. Maybe he had just been venting from the shock of Kurakami's scathing proclamation.
行こうよ。みんな待ってるよ。
先輩、待ってください。
I'd actually been waiting for a chance to be all alone with Susahara today. I couldn't do this earlier because Atsuta and the others were watching, so this was the perfect opportunity for me.
実は先輩にお渡ししたいものがありまして。
何？
Back in the days before the collapse of the bubble economy, individual idols were raised with care. But gradually, trends shifted towards idol units, such as Kitty Cat Club and Ekibi Musume. Instead of being raised with care, they now had to fight each other. In that sense, my Cleaning Princess act was beyond lucky. It was rare to be raised with such care as an individual these days. But things were different now. The staff, stage lights, and everyone's eyes would no longer be focused on me alone. I had to survive and stand out amongst the group to be acknowledged. I was the Kurusu, the new me who graduated and been reborn from Magical Lily.
私たちいつも全力青春体当たりフラワーハイスクールです。
Nowadays, the idol lore was comprised of powerful, warring fiefdoms. Countless units were born and died without ever making names for themselves. But just the same, they all strive to be the next AKB, Musume, or Memorio Cover A. Flower High School was just one of those units. They were an all-female high school student group that fit perfectly into the category of passable, right between the major and underground groups. Their selling point was their intense dancing, which the members did until they could go on no longer. Some had even collapsed. It was overkill, but their sincere devotion to the task had made the rounds on the internet, resulting in a major boost of popularity recently. Eager to take advantage of the situation and hit it big, the agency had grown abuzz with the notion of auditioning a new member. It was from among many candidates that Yurida Kurusu, the former Magical Lily, was selected.
今日はいよいよ新メンバーを迎えることになっちゃったよ。みんなも知ってるよね。そう、あの人なんだよ。私小さい頃めっちゃテレビで見てた憧れだったんだよ。マジカルリリーことクルス・リリア。カモン！
Today's event featured several, not quite major idol units. Here, fans of different groups could interact. Popular units would get more fans as unpopular ones were weeded out. But that was only natural in this world. I wouldn't be buried. I would persevere as Lydia Kurusu.
ハッロロー。みんな元気？
リッディー！
この度フラハイの新入生として帰ってきましたクルス・リリアです。
ハードクリンクリン！リリマジカルリリ
リリアちゃんのファンめっちゃ情熱的。さすがマジカルリリーは違うね。違うわ。もう私はお掃除の国のプリンセスじゃないの。プリンセスはもう女子高生。成長した私の魅力みんなに焼き付けちゃうんだからね。
リリー！リッディー！わー！
I wondered then if Susahara was somewhere amongst the massive crowd. I'd given him a VIP ticket, so he should have been able to skip all the lines. What do you think? See how excited all these people are? Then again, he was a tough customer. I doubted he'd be swayed by other people's enthusiasm. It was strange. I'd been out on the stage so many times that I'd stopped having nerves over it long ago. Yet my heart was pounding so hard over one boy amidst a sea of countless heads. I still didn't know what I saw in him. He seemed kind, yet was also remorseless in pointing out the truth. Perhaps I'd never met anyone like him before. Was that why he made my heart go a-flutter? I thought he was the sadist type, but maybe I was a masochist all along. I discovered a new side of myself.
私たちフラワーハイスクール、新しいメンバーをよろしくね。この後ブースにてシングルを私たち全員で販売します。お買い上げの方には漏れなく推しメン1名を選んでの生握手もできちゃいます。ブースで待ってるからね。絶対に来てね。
うわー、リーマジカルリー。
Several other rival units came to the stage after. Flower High left the stage after announcing my debut and our new song to commemorate it. We took a short break before we had to head for our booth. Helping sell our single and shaking the customer's hands were both very important jobs. A customer could shake the hand of one member per purchased CD. The agency was counting the exact number we each got, of course, which would influence who took center position. Well, I already had a sense for the hierarchy. I wasn't naive. I knew it would be an uphill struggle. I had to work hard to keep my smile up and remember the faces of everyone who shook my hand. It would all be over if they started thinking I was rude or arrogant. I had to treat them like kings so I could attract the other members' fans, one by one by one.
お買い上げありがとうございます。握手は誰をご指名でしょうか。
ちーちゃん一筋です。お願いします。
リリーちゃん、ずっと応援してました。
愛ちゃん指名で。リリーさん、握手してください。
おお、リリーちゃん、さすがの人気。またご指名だよ。はーい、お買い上げありがとうございます。
リリーちゃん、ピカピカマジックやってください。
ピカピカマジックでクリーンクリーン。リリーがお兄ちゃんのハートをホピホピホッピーにしちゃうぞ。
リリマジカルリリー。
リリアちゃん、応援に来ました。
あ、先輩来てくれたんですか。嬉しいです。
学校では言えなかったけど、ここでは言える。俺にピカピカマジックしてください。
もう夏やお兄ちゃんは仕方ないな。それピカピカマジックでお兄ちゃんのハートをクリンクリーン。
ブライト。
It was Flower High's rule to go all out until you collapsed. And that's why I had to give the fans what they wanted, even if it killed me. I put on my best smile to show my new self to all those who'd supported me since I was Magical Lily. To stand out to the hardcore fans who bought enough copies to shake each member's hand. And to make those who'd picked the new member out of curiosity fall for me for real.
ありがとうございます。精一杯頑張ります。 ください。
リリーちゃん、5枚買っちゃいましたよ。5回握手してください。
人気すっごいね。さすがマジカルリリー。
The popularity today was like a welcoming ceremony for the new member. Some of these fans would be satisfied to have met me just once in their lives. That wasn't good. Ideally, you want them to keep coming back. You have to make zealous fans out of them. In that sense, the other members' fans were all passionate zealots who kept coming back for more. Magical Lily's fans just came to celebrate her long-awaited return. They hadn't necessarily been converted into Rydia Kurusu fans. I wondered again if Susahara was there. I felt like knowing he was would be motivating. Idols work hard for everyone's sake. That's a rule that is set in stone. But a part of me wondered if it was okay to work hard just for Susahara's sake. At least until he acknowledged the new me, that is. Oh no. I can't think about this sort of thing on the job. I hope Sudahara comes by soon. I could tell he was probably in line. After all, there had been a bond between us since long before we'd met. Just then, I felt like I picked up on his signal. There he was. He stood out like a sore thumb in the line, clearly not used to these sort of events. Oh, did our eyes just meet? Yes, they did.
だったら僕にも近づかない方がいいかもね。僕も汚れてるそうだから。
But why would he have said that to me? No, this wasn't the time. I had to focus on the work before me.
お買い上げありがとうございます。握手は誰をご指名でしょうか。
リリーちゃんでお願いします。
はい。リリーを指名してくれてありがとう、お兄ちゃん。
The little girl ran in from behind. It was me, Lily. Cleaning Princess Magical Lily.
リリーちゃん、昔からずっと応援しておりましたぞ。
ありがとう、お兄ちゃん。リリー嬉しいよ。
リリーちゃんのこと、ネットでは劣化したとかなんとか言ってる輩もおりますが、僕の中ではマジカルリリーの輝きは永遠ですぞ。
Goodbye, Magical Lily is a total hag after 3 years, my waifu. Why do Magical Lily's fans or who do Magical Lily's fans even think they are? Lily's totally out of place. She looked really pissed off too. What's she even doing in Flower High? Her dancing was totally out of sync. Who the hell's that She-Hulk? They should just kick her out already.
ネットは荒れてるみたいですけど、僕はずっとマジカルリリーを応援してますからね。リリーちゃんがどんなに変わっちゃっても僕の愛は変わりません。劣化とかオワコンとか言われてますけど、そんなの気にしちゃダメですよ。
リリー気にしないよ。だってお掃除の国のプリンセスだもん。
せーの、ピカピカマジックで
みんなのハートをクリンクリン。
リリマジカルリリー。
More and more people were asking for Magical Lily, but no one asked for Rydia Kurusu.
大忙しで参っちゃうね。そこ、私の場所。どいてよ、劣化ババア。あんたお掃除 ちの国のプリンセスマジカルリリーです。あなたのハートをクリンクリンそしてあんたはかつて私だった残骸ね。残骸あんたね。見てよ私の体。みんなが夢に見る理想の妹。キュートで可愛くてちょっぴりと悪魔。抱きしめたら折れちゃいそうなくらいに華奢だけど、そうせずにはいられないほどに愛くるしい。
I knew those words. I had said them all in my head long ago.
それに比べてあんたのその体はなーに。化け物。いた。マジカルリリーは永遠のお姫様なの。あんたなんかどっかに行っちゃえ。汚い化け物。ピカピカマジックでクリンクリン。
リリー大丈夫？立ちくらみ？
張り切りすぎだよ。休んだら。ありがとうございます。握手は誰をご指名なさいますか？
クルスリリアさんね。
That was the first time today anyone had called me Lydia Kurisu. Susuhara.
見てたよ。踊りすごい頑張ってたね。君のリリーとは違う新しいクルスリリアをしっかり見せてもらったからね。
My eyes were so fogged up with tears I couldn't see anything. I knew there was something special about Susuhara. I didn't care if others didn't understand. As long as he did, that's all that I needed. I shook his hand. Susuhara's hand was cool. But when I held it, I felt something frozen in my heart begin to thaw.
おお、ススハラじゃねえか。お前も来てたのかよ。
I wonder if we're going to have a chapter where Natsuya has a nightmare. I think I'd feel really bad about that if that happened.
いやあ夏くん、こんなところで会えるとは思わなかったよ。
誰目当てで来たんだ？やっぱリリアちゃんか？マジカルリリーの良さをこれほど短時間で気づくとは。さすがススハラ、グレイトな男だぜ。
リリアちゃん頑張ってたね。
ダンスもキレッキレだったよな。さすがはマジカルリリーだぜ。
ところでさ、シングルってどこで売ってるの？
ああ、お前まだシングル買ってねえのかよ。グレイト。
リリアちゃんに挨拶していきたくてさ、さっきから迷子になってるんだよ。
ススハラを迷子にさせるとはな。この会場は実にグレイトだぜ。俺が案内してやるよ。こっちだぜ。あれ、こっちだったかな。あれあれ、
ね、迷うでしょ。
Late that night, my phone started glowing. I didn't know the number, but I had my suspicions.
はい。
ススハラです。夜分遅くにごめんね。
いえ、なんか予感してましたから。
For a moment, I wondered how Susahara got my number, but I didn't feel the least bit unsettled. After all, I wanted to know what his number was too.
何でしょうか。
だろうね。
What a weirdo, but it sounded like he had me figured out entirely. After all, I was the one who had business with him. But I couldn't think of what it was. No, that wasn't it. Maybe I just felt I didn't need any silly reason to talk to him.
カーテン開けてみて。
カーテンって、私の部屋のですか？
I stood up and opened the nearby curtain. I saw the residential district blanketed by night, same as always. But there was a familiar face under the streetlight in front of the house.
散歩でもどうかなって思って。
男の人に真夜中のお散歩を誘われたなんて初めてで戸惑ってます。
リリアちゃんがしたいかなって思って。
そうですね。私もそんな気分でした。
When I look back on this event, I realize I should have questioned it more. I never told anyone my home phone number, to say nothing of my cell number. It wouldn't have taken much thought to realize he shouldn't have known it. But at the time, he was all I could think about. Susahara understood me completely, so I didn't find anything strange about him knowing my number. You know what they say about something being blind. And so I devoted myself to that thing that looked like Susahara, without finding anything odd about it. But don't get me wrong, Susahara. It's not like I trusted your doppelganger specifically. I trusted it because I thought it was you. No, it was probably only me. Talked about a lot. I felt I could tell him anything. We shared several nights like that. He knew the more I vented, the better I felt. But all I vented about were my own weaknesses. The more I admitted them, the more I became addicted to him, like a drug. Eventually, I came to depend on the thing that resembled Susahara with every fiber of my being. Before him, I was no more than a little girl, bearing her weaknesses and unleashing her troubles. I told him everything and believed whatever he said without question. But I didn't mind if he thought I was weak.
きっとリリアちゃんはまだ迷ってると思うんだ。
迷い？
クルス・リリアとして新しい出発をするか、
それとも
マジカルリリーで居続けることを選ぶか。
それができたら私は最初から苦しまなかったです。
そうだよね。
By no means did I hate Magical Lily. She'd brought me to the height of my popularity, the manifestation of the first and last stroke of luck in my life. I didn't want to let go of her if I didn't have to. What I really wanted was to stay as Magical Lily forever.
なのに体はどんどんこんな醜い姿にブクブク脂肪がついて、胸もお尻もこんなに醜くなって、私だってこんな体にならなきゃずっとリリーでいたかった。
正直に言えたね。偉いよ、リリア。
That was the first time he said my name so tenderly. It felt so good, like we'd grown closer than ever before. I felt tears rain down my cheeks.
マジカルリリーには戻れない。 応援してくれたみんなが劣化だのババア化だのノッポだの。だから私はクルス・リリアに生まれ変わらなければならないのよ。
戻れる方法があるとしたら、リリアは試してみたい？
It didn't sound like he was just spouting nonsense then. I knew that if it were possible, I wanted to do it more than anything. That's right. He must have been waiting for me to say that.
それは
君は信じてくれるかな？いや、いくらなんでも無理だよね。
何ですか？もったいぶらないで見せてください。
He took something out of his pocket and showed it to me. It was a small black bottle. No, I only thought it was a black bottle. Upon closer inspection, I realized it was the contents that were. They swayed back and forth when Susahara shook the bottle. Fine grains like sand in an hourglass.
何ですかそれ？
インドのずっと北の少数部族に伝わるとても珍しい薬草の粉末なんだ。その部族では知恵者である長老を延命させるためにある飛薬を使っていたんだって。それがこれ。
延命の飛薬？
その噂が古代中国に伝わり、不老不死の薬と語られたこともあるんだそうだよ。さすがに不死の効果はないよ。人は必ずいつか死ぬ定めなんだから。でも不老の効果は本物なんだ。
不老って老いないってことですか？
全身の細胞を活性化させ、長老の老化を食い止めることができたんだって。でももともと全身の細胞がすでに老化している人にはその程度の効果しかないけれど、若者が摂取すると若返りの効果があるんだ。
No way. That was the first thing that came to my mind, but I didn't say it. Because if I did, my last hope would be gone forever.
嘘なんかじゃないよ。ちゃんと聞く。証拠もあるんだ。
誰か試したんですか？
うん。僕がその証拠だよ。
え？
僕はいくつくらいに見える？
I understood what he was implying, but that would mean...
普通の高校生に見えます。違うんですか？
僕の本当の年齢はもっともっと上なんだ。
That couldn't be. Susahara had a baby face. He could definitely pass for a middle schooler. Actually, had we not met at school, I'm almost certain I would have mistaken him for one. Susahara whispered his true age to me, but that would make him older than my father. I just couldn't believe it.
僕はものすごい未熟児として生まれてね。半年は生きられないと言われてたんだ。幸いにも1歳の誕生日を迎えられたけれど、病院で管につながれたままの寝たきりだったよ。もちろん保育園も無理だし、学校なんてとんでもない。ずっと来年までは生きられないと言われ続けて、それを繰り返してずっと生きてきたんだよ。
Normally, you'd just write this off as nonsense. But though it sounded unbelievable, I found myself accepting his story. I told him everything about myself, so I wanted to accept everything he told me about himself, no matter how strange it sounded.
幸いにも 僕は成人してから少しずつ健康になっていってね。20代の頃には少し病弱な程度の普通の体になっていたよ。でも僕は保育園にも小学校にも通ったことがない。誰もが当たり前に通ったはずの学校、そこに通えなかったことは僕にとってあまりに悲しいことだった。僕は当たり前の子供時代をぽっかりと失って大人になってしまったんだ。そんな時偶然この飛躍に出会ったんだよ。
じゃあ先輩はそれを飲んで若返って。
うん。おかげで小学校、中学校、そして高校の生活をこうして送ることができたんだよ。
信じられない。
僕は一度きりの生を普通に送りたかっただけなんだ。生まれつきの体質でそれが叶わなかったけど、この薬のおかげでそれを取り戻せた。だからこの薬は僕にはもう不要なんだ。
じゃあそれは。
うん。君さえ良ければあげるよ。
He gave me the bottle. Can you believe it? I was holding a medicine too fantastic, even for most fairy tales. But if this was a dream, I didn't want to wake up. Because with this, I could have my adorable body back, the one that made me the Lily everyone knew and loved. But that, of course, was all a total lie. Just how crazy was I to believe in it? A medicine that turned back the biological clock? That sort of thing would have made international news ages ago if it were real. Huh? You think it's sadder that I thought you had a baby face? Sorry. But I never could have dreamed he was lying. Because I trusted you. That's why I took the shady medicine without question. I decided to use it right away, like he told me to. I would cleanse myself in the bathroom, then put a little bit of the powder in my palm. The smooth black grains quickly melted into ink in my warm hand. When I poked it with my finger, I saw it was pure liquid. No matter how much I stirred it, it remained the same inky black. So I covered my hands with it. My palms became pitch black, not like the darkest of ink. Resolving myself, I covered my belly with it. The darkness never faded, no matter how much I spread it around. Just as Suzuhara had said, even just a little bit of it was enough to cover my whole body. Eventually, I looked into the mirror to discover I looked like a jet black mannequin. Only my eyes still held any shine, making me look like a monster peeking out of the darkness. But I couldn't let it bother me. I was already enough of a monster as it was, so nothing that happened with my body could faze me anymore. But I was only jet black at first. Just as he told me, the color started to fade, like it was being sucked into my body. The black faded away with each passing moment, and after a few minutes was gone like it had never been there to begin with. I ran my fingers across my skin, only to feel something twitching underneath it. I didn't find it strange at all. I figured the lymph circulation must be improving my metabolism. I felt the change right away the next morning. It wasn't much, but I could tell since I looked in the mirror every day.
私幼くなってる。
それはすごいね。ほんの数日で実感できるくらいに変化があるなんて。
先輩と違って私現役 JK ですんで。
細胞が若いから僕よりもずっと効きがいいんだろうね。
これを毎日続けていけばもっともっと若返れるんですよね。でももうもらった分がなくなっちゃいました。
大丈夫だよ。持ってきてるから。次は肌になじませたら内側からなじませないといけない。でも今度は少し刺激が強いと思うよ。
内側からなじませるってどうやるんです？
そんな難しいことじゃないよ。僕が教えてあげるから。でも若い分きっと反動が強いと思うんだ。
痛いとかうずくとかその程度なら全然平気です。
体の根本を作り直すからね。しばらく風邪に似た症状が出るかもしれない。僕の時でも熱が出たような感じで少しふらついたから。
それくらい全然。
じゃあやり方を教えるよ。
I was such an idiot. I actually took that mysterious powder as told, and I put it inside me this time too. But I actually felt like I was getting younger. I believe that I could return to my heyday as Magical Lily, and I could show you just how special I was. Just as Susahara told me, I put the powder in a tube-shaped piece of rolled-up paper and put it in my mouth. In hindsight, I think that thing was smiling when he saw me do that. Like he knew he dragged me into something from which I could never turn back.
吸ってみて。むせないように気をつけてね。
I hadn't felt anything when I'd applied it to my skin, but this time I immediately felt dizzy. I ignored it and continued to inhale, and before long I felt a heat building up in me as though my chest were on fire. I was a bit dazed, like when you spend too much time in a bath. Not even the spiced sake I'd had for New Year's made me feel like this. Susahara was right to say this had a lot more kick, if just inhaling a little was enough to cause all this. By the time I finished taking the entire dose, my body was burning up so badly I wanted to throw my clothes off. He told me that was a sign my cells were working to make me younger. Even after I went to bed and closed my eyes, the fire in my chest didn't fade. Quite the opposite. I felt aches different from the pounding of my heart, along with something coursing through my body. It was like I had a swarm of worms crawling through my lymph nodes and blood vessels. Normally I'd be disgusted by the sensation, but I saw it as a sign my body was trying to turn young. By the next morning, I couldn't get out of bed anymore. I had a high fever, my body was swollen, and my joints ached. My mother said it was probably a cold and scolded me for going too far on my nightly walks. But I couldn't afford to stop my secret meetings with Susahara. There was a precise dosage and so on involved, so I couldn't take it without his instructions. I had to keep this going until I got Magical Lily's body back. I stayed in bed with a high fever through the day, snuck out when I was feeling a little better at night, and had Susahara give me the medicine. This routine went on for several days. My parents told me to go to the hospital I didn't want a doctor to order me to stop, so I skipped in secret. My face in the mirror looked haggard. However, I was convinced this was part of the process of destroying my monstrous body from within. And then, 1 week had passed since I started taking the medicine. By this point, I was starting to get vertigo in addition to high fevers, and it was a struggle just to get out of bed. I figured my parents would call an ambulance if I made a fuss, so I put up with it all no matter how hard it got. Once my rendezvous time with Susahara drew near, I forced myself up despite all the pain. My fever was so bad, that day I could barely move. But my phone was beeping to let me know the time to meet Susahara had come, and so I hurried onward. I had started seeing the world as mushy and distorted. It felt like it was pulsating from time to time. I couldn't even tell if I was walking on my own 2 feet, or if I was rolling about while still asleep. Even the handrail by the stairs I'd grown so accustomed to warped in my eyes, and so it took a lot of effort to get down the stairs without falling. Fortunately, my parents didn't notice, and I managed to get outside. Fortunately. An odd choice of words, isn't it? It had been much more fortunate if I'd just collapsed then and there.
やっぱり若いから刺激が強いんだね。どうした？
熱かな。おかしく見える。
I knew that had to be Susahara, but he looked very different. I figured that it must have been the fever messing up my vision. But while his voice was the same, his body wasn't. It was like he was a big black shadow. He had long black hair that fell to the ground, and horns that looked like withered branches growing out of his head. The dim glow from the streetlights didn't illuminate much, so I couldn't even see the look on his face. But his voice was still Susahara's, so I still believed it was him.
今夜の服用で薬はおしまいだよ。あとは楽にして時間に任せて体が作り変わっていくのを待つだけだから。
Susahara's voice sounded odd from time to time. Something must have been up with my ears. I was in a daze and on the verge of collapsing, but it was the last time, so I endured, figuring I could sleep while I wanted later. At Susahara's urging, we sat down by the park's flower bed. When we did, he opened his right hand and tilted his palm downward. Something seemed to flutter down from it. It was black and light, like a tiny feather. But it reflected no light, even under the glow of the streetlights. And then what looked like black snow or soot began raining down. Susahara caught it in his left palm, forming a small mountain. He then kneaded it with his hands, changing it into the shape of a thin tube. This was the last of the medicine. But this was the end of the line for me. I was dizzy and couldn't even trust what I was seeing. Susahara must have realized that, because he took my hands and helped me.
さあ、頑張って。これで最後の薬だよ。これを吸い込めば呪いのすすが全身に行き渡るよ。
マジカルリリーに戻れる。すよね。
吸って。
I did as I was told. I inhaled it deep into my lungs. And when I did, my head was filled with a burst of pure light. I was still dazed, but the sense of fatigue and suffocation that had plagued me cleared right up. I'd hit the peak. My week of penance must have finally borne fruit. Just then, I saw someone walk slowly out of the light. It was a little girl. It was me, back in the good old days where I was petite and adorable. Tears of gratitude welled in her eyes, and she smiled appreciatively at me.
私を取り戻すために頑張ってくれてありがとう、ババア。ババアは余計よ。これで私たちはマジカルリリーを取り戻せるよ。あんたは私と一つになるの。これで一番輝いてたあの頃を私たちは取り戻せるわ。先輩に認めてもらえるかな。もちろんだわ。私の微笑みに耐えられる男の子なんているわけないもん。それも鈴原先輩のためだけに微笑むの。みんなのリリーじゃない、先輩だけのリリーになるの。そうしたら絶対先輩のハートを私だけのものにできるんだから。できるわ。だってその姿こそが私の一番なんだから。
Lily slowly embraced me. I hugged her back. I felt the heat in my chest merge with the one in hers.
あなたは私という体にできた吹き出物、ニキビみたいなもの。それをきれいさっぱり落とせば本当の私の体に帰ることができる。私の化け物みたいな体をきれいさっぱり落とせば元に。もうお薬はすべて飲んだから、あとは寝て待つだけ。それで私はよみがえれるの。そして鈴むお兄ちゃんだけの私になるの。早く私という吹き出物を消し去ってしまおう。そして早く綺麗な私になって会いに行こう。
All of a sudden, I heard tires screeching as a car quickly took off. That sound brought me back to my senses, clearing some of the haze in my mind.
どうしたの？
なんでもないです。急に頭がすっきりして。
峠を越えたんだね。飛躍の効果が君の体の中に行き渡ったんだよ。もうあとは大丈夫。待つだけだよ。
待つだけ。
待つだけで大丈夫だよ。
With those final words, the thing that looked like Suzuhara faded into the darkness. I suddenly found myself worried. Oddly enough, the medicine had felt more real when it was causing my body to suffer. Now that it all cleared up, I wondered if its effects had already stopped working. But Suzuhara said it was spreading through my body. The effects that would purge the ugly boil that I was from Lily would soon arrive, and before the week had ended, I saw it happen. A few days after I was well enough to go back to school.
田くん、おはよ
挨拶なんてしてる場合じゃねえぜ。見たかよこれ。
学校に週刊誌とか持ってきたら怒られるんじゃない？
う。あれ？クルスリリアってリリアちゃんの記事？
Flower High member Rydia Kurisu caught smoking at night. The former magical lily, after a 3-year hiatus from the peak of her popularity, made headlines with her stunning return as the newest member of Flower High, only to be caught in a major scandal. The pure idol, now a delinquent smoker.
そんなわけないよ。リリアちゃんにタバコの匂いなんてしなかった。
すごいね。匂いでわかるんだ。
リリアちゃんがタバコなんて吸うわけがねえ。絶対にガセだぜ。
Lydia Kurisu's stunning wanderlust caught smoking all alone at night in the park. Coming back into the limelight after a 3-year hiatus must have been stressful, sure, but she's still a minor. Even if she were an adult, it still would have been a shock to her fans that the Princess of Cleaningland smokes.
写真はリリアちゃんにそっくりだね。
全然似てねえよ。ちょっと似てるだけの別人に決まってるぜ。
The photo appeared to have been taken with a zoom lens. It showed Rydia sitting all alone in the park late at night with what appeared to be a cigarette in her mouth. It was in casual clothes, so she was a far cry from the glamorous girl on stage. But there was no doubt it was Rydia Kurisu herself.
これは君本人で間違いないのか?
Yes, the girl in the photo was unmistakably me. Come to think of it, I'd heard a car speeding off into the night that they must have been photographers or something. There was no way they'd believe me about the de-aging medicine, even if I explained it. To an onlooker, all they saw was a cigarette.
これは。
My lack of words was as good as a confession, but it wasn't shock that rendered me speechless. The mist still clouding my head made this all feel worlds away. Because of that, I found the guidance counselor's interrogation tiresome. Somewhat exasperated, I decided to readily admit I'd been smoking. As a result, I was suspended from school, but I didn't really care anyway. School did nothing to help me sing and dance, much less earn Susahara's recognition. All that mattered was getting Lily's charm back. School was pointless compared to that. My mother gave me an earful back home. She was sharp. She knew I would never do this on my own, thus she demanded the name of the instigator from me. I didn't care about the rest, but hearing Susahara get badmouth would have angered me. And so instead I gave her some sob story about how I was too stressed, that I felt trapped, that all the cruel comments on the internet had hurt too badly. For some reason she apologized at the end, saying she must have driven me into a corner. She also apologized for not recognizing my efforts, but I wasn't interested. The only recognition I wanted was from Susahara. Even the bigwigs at the agency gave me a hard time. They yelled at me for doing this at such a vital period for Flower High's future. Honestly, I didn't care about Flower High School anymore. So long as I could get Magical Lily back, I would make it on my own. After much uproar, I was sentenced to an indefinite suspension from idol work. It seemed my name was promptly wiped from the Flower High School's roster. Perhaps the situation was a lot more serious than I thought, but I couldn't bring myself to give a damn about any of it. Back when I was Magical Lily, the agency had done nothing but cling to my shadow. Besides, I didn't want the recognition, only Susahara's. My body felt like lead that night. My mother was crying in the living room, but I just didn't care at all. It all felt so disconnected. Just then, I got a visitor. Susahara had come to see me. Normally, I would have been surprised that he'd come in without knocking, but that didn't matter. Finally, then, I understood. I was a boil, a pimple, a tumor, pus. That was why Lidia Kurusu had to wither and be erased. Yes, the medicine had taken effect all right. Because now, it was over for Lidia Kurusu, wasn't it?
そうしたら私はリリーになれて先輩に認めてもらえるかな。
そうだね。きっと認められるよ。元の可愛らしい愛くるしい華奢で小さなあの体に戻れたらね。
早く戻って先輩が一番可愛かった時の姿を先輩に。私いつ戻れるんですか？もうクルス・リリアという海は出尽くしたと思います。いつリリーの体になれるんですか？
これから始まるよ。感じないかな？体の変化が。
I didn't notice because it was so faint, but I did indeed feel my body changing. My joints and blood vessels were throbbing.
君はこれからさなぎになるんだ。
さなぎ。
そして生まれ変わって帰ってくるんだよ。
He was right. Though my body felt like it was melting on the inside, my skin felt dry and bulky. So that was it. I was becoming a chrysalis. Susahara sounded surprised. I looked around and noticed that the room had gone dark at some point, and that there were multiple red lights shining there. Those pinpricks in the darkness were all focused on their prey. They had Susahara surrounded. I couldn't even begin to count how many there were.
なんだこいつらは。
Susahara sounded panicked for the first time ever. I got the impression something terrifying was happening, but the haze in my head prevented me from connecting to it. The countless eyes shining in the darkness walked forward, revealing their true forms. They were Japanese dolls. The dolls shuffled and charged at Susahara as though to devour him. Susahara's voice sounded distorted again. Perhaps all death cries do. He started screaming and heard what sounded like thick leather being torn to pieces. The dolls were tearing off his skin. Something repulsive that I couldn't possibly imagine, where his innards squirmed in his place. At that moment, I finally understood. This thing wasn't Susahara, just something that had been pretending to be him. It must have taken advantage of my weakness and donned the form of my beloved Susahara in order to approach me. The dolls gnawed into the monster's bleeding flesh and entrails and dragged them out. The fake Susahara writhed as it changed into a pile of guts, which, anew, amassed before the dolls. When I saw that, it came to an epiphany. That thing had tricked me. You could never turn back the biological clock. I totally bought into its story and just did whatever it told me. No, but then, did that mean I wouldn't get back my old body? If so, then what was the point of losing Livia Kurusu? No, I was going to turn into a chrysalis, and when I woke up, I'd be Lily again. The room around me had changed before I even knew it. It was white, white as an angel feathers. No, this wasn't my room. Where was I? My body felt funny. My skin was stiff and aching. It hurt when I moved my arm. It was only natural, after all. There was a thick needle connecting to a tube stuck into it. An IV was dripping from the other end. So, this was a hospital then. I felt something large lying next to my head. When I turned to look, I was surprised to find a Japanese doll there. It was a new, beautiful doll that had been well groomed. It made sense. No wonder I had weird dreams with this thing in my head, or bed. Kurakami had been standing next to my bed the whole time, watching me. I was surprised, but the pain, fatigue, and disorientation I felt far outweighed that.
ここはどこでしょう？
病院。
Perhaps I should have been more surprised I was holding an intelligible conversation with Kurakami.
この人形、まさかお見舞いのつもりですか？
そのままにしておいて。
結構です。お人形さんと添い寝はとっくに卒業してますんで。
I tried to push the doll away, but even the slightest movement filled me with sharp pain. It seemed it'd be easiest on me if I just lay there and did nothing, like that doll.
どうして私は病院なんかに。
お前はもう死ぬから。だから言った。あいつは汚れてるから近寄るなと。
だったら僕にも近づかない方がいいかもね。僕も汚れてるそうだから。
どうして先輩が汚れてるんですか？
さあね。でもさっき会った黒髪さんが僕にそう言うんだ。僕は汚れているから二度と近づくな。不幸が訪れるって。
わけわかんない。なんで鈴原先輩に近づいちゃいけないんですか？
あれはすすにまみれてる。
は？
私たちを惑わす呪いはすすを求めるから。
わけわかんない上に余計なお世話です。私のことはどう言おうと勝手ですけど、先輩の悪口はやめてください。
それが呪い。
はあ？
私たちはあれのすすに惹かれる。お前とてなぜあれに惹かれるのか理由などわからぬはずだ。
What was she going on about? My body hurt, my mind was a daze, and I could barely move. Yet she had the gall to put that creepy doll next to me and start spouting nonsense. What was wrong with her?
何を言ってんのかわかりませんが、あなたと話すと疲れます。誰か呼んでくれませんか？喉が渇きましたんで。
お前の母親が下にいた。呼べば喜んで飛んでくるだろう。
それと、この気持ち悪い人形持って帰ってください。
Intense pain accompanied my attempt to move. It felt like my whole body was shattering apart. But I didn't want to see this creepy thing a second longer, so I fought hard to pick it up. However, the pain was so great that I ended up dropping it on the floor. And at that precise moment, I blacked out.
いらないなら持って帰るけど、あんたの寿命がそれで終わるだけ。
Before I knew it, the doll I dropped to the floor was being pressed into my chest. It seemed that I'd only been unconscious for as long as the doll had been away from me. But my condition was clearly worse than before. The sense of swelling in my abdomen I'd managed to ignore earlier was now overwhelming me.
嘘でしょ。
I couldn't even stay conscious without having this creepy doll at my side. Oh, right. I was becoming a chrysalis. That had to be why I was feeling so terrible, but that also meant I'd soon be reborn. But there was a part of me exasperated by my lingering belief in that notion. Was I becoming a chrysalis to get Lily back? Or had I merely been deceived by the monster disguised as Susahara? I couldn't tell anymore. So, all I could do was believe in the more hopeful possibility.
私は死にません。いえ、死ぬとしたらクルス・リリアが消えるだけ。すぐに私はこの殻を破ってリリーとして生まれ変わるんです。
Kurakami probably didn't understand a word I said. I couldn't blame her. I was just mumbling nonsense.
先輩は一体何しに来たんですか？
奇病に侵されて余命いくばくと聞き、様子を見に来た。
奇病まあ、そういうことになってるんでしょうね。
しかし手遅れだった。もはやできることは何もない。
余計なお世話です。
The sense of swelling in my abdomen grew stronger and stronger, and it was so hard to breathe that I broke out into a cold sweat. It must have been because I dropped that doll earlier.
お前は死ぬ。
どうも。
しかしそれも定めかもしれぬ。そして解放でもあるやもしれぬ。
何を言ってるかさっぱりです。
さようなら、布川の娘。死ぬことが許されたお前が羨ましい。
おや、呼んでもらえますか？
Right after Kurakami left the room, my mother came tearfully rushing in. It seems she'd been told I was in critical condition and might not wake up again. She was elated with belief that I was on the road to recovery, but I knew her joy would be short-lived. It was my body. I knew it best. Just as Kurakami had said, I wouldn't last much longer. It was only thanks to the grace or whatever of that creepy doll that I was staying conscious. And besides, while the doll had arrived looking like it was fresh off the shelf, its hair was now frizzing and its kimono was tearing like it stood the test of time. I could barely breathe, but my mind was clear, so I quickly said what I had to. I didn't have a moment to spare.
お母さん、今までありがとう。お父さんにもありがとうと伝えて。私、多分もうすぐ死ぬ。そして、もう時間はわずかしかないの。そのわずかの時間をどうしても捧げたい人がいるの。お願い、呼んで。
News of Nunokawa's mysterious illness and critical condition reached the LCSC. I hadn't spoken to her all that much, but she'd given me a ticket to her debut concert, and though we hadn't known each other long, she seemed to enjoy my company. So I wanted to go visit her in the hospital, but they weren't allowing any visitors. It was then I got the call. Nunokawa was at death's door, and she wanted to see me before the end. This may sound unfair to her, but I honestly had no idea why she'd asked for me. Normally, you want to spend your final moments with the people you cared for most, like close friends or family. So I didn't have a clue why I took priority above all of them. I didn't know what to say. Who in the world was the me she kept meeting night after night? I hadn't even seen her once since the day of the concert. I'd gone looking for her group's booth to say hi to her, but in the end, neither Natsu or I could find it. I hadn't spoken to her since the day she gave me the ticket at the shrine, but I didn't know if I should tell her that, because I wanted to believe her. However, she was probably in critical condition because of that thing that posed as me. So all I could do was hang my head, dumbfounded.
先輩からすれば、わけのわからない、めちゃくちゃな話だと思います。でも、私だって話してて思いました。なんてわけのわからない話。そもそもなんで私の頭の中が先輩のことでいっぱいなのかさえ私にはわからないんです。どうして私はあなたのことがこんなにも。
I couldn't tell her. It was a mystery to us both. Why was it she took such a liking to me? We were attracted to his soot. That was what Kurakami had said. According to Nunokawa, she also said this. The curse seeks soot, so it deceives us. That's the curse.
僕が呪われていると。
そんな風なことを言ってましたね。 本当に失礼ですよね。
I didn't recall getting cursed, but I remembered what Kurikami had told me at the shrine. You're corrupted. Just who was this Toei Kurikami, and what did she know? And why was it she weighed so heavily in my mind? My feelings for her sounded a lot like Lydia's for me. An attraction without any solid basis. Was that the curse?
すみません。急に呼びつけて、こんなわけのわからない話を聞かせて。
僕に何かできることはある？
はい。だから呼んだんです。もし本当に私が若返るなら、その姿を先輩に見てほしいんです。私わかるんです。もうすぐ私というさなぎが帰るって。
それを見届ければいいんだね。
はい。そしてもしそれがとても魅力的だったなら、どうか私を認めると声をかけてくれませんか？もうすぐだから。
大丈夫？今誰かに。
呼ばないで。先輩だけが見て。お願い。ふとめくって私の体を
Pulling back a girl's covers felt the same as taking off her clothes, so I was a bit reluctant. But I fulfilled her wish. I gasped. Her body was so...
綺麗だよ。
嘘。今はさなぎだからみっともない姿だと思います。
Indeed, she looked just like a chrysalis, an insect's pupa. Was what she dreamed of truly lying inside there? Hoping for that just seemed so... Keeping my thoughts from showing on my face was harder than anything else. She believed her most beautiful self was resting inside her, but it was just too difficult to imagine what her ideal was, when it was already difficult enough as it was to look at that. Despite that, I lied.
みっともなくなんかないよ。リリアちゃんの綺麗な体だよ。
Just then, it shook, and she started moaning in agony. I heard what sounded like wood cracking. It was the sound of the head of the doll snapping off. And then, as if that were the signal, the time finally came.
見ててください。そして可愛かったら、素敵だったら、 リリアとして聞きたいから。
Wow, I don't mean to be rude, but wow, this is going on for so long. This could have ended like 12 or 40 paragraphs ago. Oh my god, this is a long sequence. A muddy muck, like pitch black blood, like amniotic fluid, spewed out of the tear in her stomach and scattered everywhere. It gushed out of her like a geyser, staining the sheets, walls, and ceiling in its filth. It sprayed on me too, but I couldn't turn away. A moment later, a misshapen lump of flesh burst forth. An orange light scattered along with the black muck. I found that sight utterly beautiful. The black muck blackening the walls caught fire the second the sparks hit it. That went for me, too. Amidst the world wreathed in crimson flames, I saw it. Something like black soot spurred from her corpse and formed into the shape of a human. It was a child with horns like withered branches growing out of her head. It looked like something imitating the body she had wished for. Wreathed in crimson flames and clad in the cursed black soot was the avatar of the curse, looking up to the ceiling and celebrating its birth. I treaded all over the disfigured corpse that was once Rydia. Did you kill Rydia? There was no way I could hold a conversation with something inhuman, but my thoughts must have gotten through to it, because it looked right at me and curved its lips into a smirk. I readied my fist. It was the only dedication I could offer before God. When I saw that, the thing stared with confusion for a moment before throwing its head back in laughter. It was pointless. You couldn't strike the moon by hitting its reflection. There was no way you could punch something inhuman in human guise. But I couldn't help but try. I wanted Rydia's soul to rest as peacefully as possible. The thing sneered as though it read my thoughts. It shot me a pitying, mocking look, almost as if it were blaming me for this. Had it killed her? Or did it really bear some curse that brought misfortune? Or did I really bear some curse that brought misfortune to those I approached? Only this thing knew the answer. No, perhaps the other one knew too. Oh my god, I thought that sequence would never end. Holy crap, that thing could do with some serious editing. I mean, I kinda like got it like an hour ago. I mean, it's cool, don't get me wrong, but wow, man, you just do not need to go on that long dragging your character's death and story. It's just too long. I was just getting tired of reading about it. I was like, just die already. But you know, I mean, I also felt that way about the cocoon sequence too, or the caterpillar sequence. It's like, yeah, I get it. Just kill the character already. But you know, I know that's part of the appeal of the series, or of this author's work, is that, you know, it's very descriptive on the horror of the main character and what happens to them. But man, I just wish somebody would have just did a little bit of trimming, just a bit, because yeah, that just didn't need to be anywhere near as long as it was. Still, overall, I'm having a good time playing this, and you know, I know there's much more stuff in here. We're not even close to getting to the end of this. I mean, I think we're like maybe, I mean, we're not even halfway. So there's I don't know. We're running out of characters to kill, so I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen next. Alright, so let's stop it there. That was story number 3. Like I said, unless they introduce more characters, we're sort of running out of people to have tragic endings with. But we'll see. Maybe something weird's going to happen. You know, it's a parallel story genre, so, you know, who knows. Anyway, this is audap. You've been watching Iwaihime on PC. Of course, I think it's still on sale for like another couple hours, so make sure to pick it up for yourself and support the publisher and developer. You know, we don't get games like this that often, especially in the horror and then comedy genre. It's a weird mix, but it's a pleasant one, except for things being a little bit too long, kind of towards the end of every character's life. But you know, maybe that's just a preference. I don't know. Let me know if you felt the same way. I felt it could have ended like an hour ago. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching. I will see you at the next stream.